Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac is one of the best games I've played this year. It is a milestone of technical achievement and has put Insomniac at the top of the list of best Sony PlayStation developers on the planet. Is this game something you need to go play? Absolutely. It is one of the best games of the year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that with no spoilers coming up right about now. Spider-Man 2 is a really interesting game to review. I think in my mind, the first things you wind up automatically doing are comparing this to the 2020 Miles Morales game because it is the most recent version. I think it was the one that showcased the PS5 and the technical chops that this console has in some of the best ways. And also, you know, you have an expectation for there to be some progress and to be some new kind of visual tidbits and visual splendor that you wind up getting from a game that had a couple more years to bake in the oven. And I have to say, Insomniac has continued to grow with everything that they do. When I said that earlier in the intro about Insomniac being one of the best and probably the best developer right now on the PlayStation 5, I say that with no doubt in my mind. I think everything you see in a game like this showcases that, from the way they deal with audio, the way they do really subtle things with lighting. And again, Miles Morales has some of the best lighting in the game, and it feels like they've even gotten better in this one. You know, technologically speaking, there are small things that harken back to some games that they've already produced that I can't talk about because of spoilers. And again, spoilers will not be a part of this review. You know, it was a really hard review to do because I can't talk about 99% of the things that are in the story. I can't talk about characters who show up. I can't talk about some of the cool, you know, small things that they do from a detail perspective. I can't show you the suits. I can't show you all the cool stuff that they've been talking about in some of the marketing. And I think that's fine. I think that that's okay. I think this review is going to be, you know, shorter and a little bit kind of, you know, more streamlined in that way because we can't talk about some of those things. But what I can talk about is, I think from a story perspective, getting a chance to see this growth from Miles Morales and from Peter Parker and some of the periphery characters like MJ has been really cool. I think the new models for these characters, especially for MJ and for Peter, look really cool. I couldn't play this game for most of it without thinking about looking at Peter Parker and one of my favorite journalists in the video game space in Patrick Klepek and being like, I feel like they modeled him after they modeled Peter Parker after Patrick. But it's one of those cool, small, nuanced things that you see from the previous game to this one where they weren't afraid to change it up a little bit and to kind of get the fans more involved in terms of bringing the fandom in and also bringing some of those small technical touches that make this game one of the best showcases of, again, why you should own a PS5 and why you should be playing Insomniac games. One of the other cool parts about this game, one of the things that really blew me away, and they showed a small piece of this throughout some of the marketing, so this isn't a spoiler, is that we got a chance to see Venom for the first time in this game. And I have to say, bar none, and, you know, I'm blown away. This is the best version of Venom we've ever seen within a game. I'm not going to go into more than that, but I can say the love and detail that Insomniac went through to bring the best, coolest, most authentic looking and feeling version of Venom to a game. They have nailed this in some of the best ways possible. I can't say more, but what I can say is they have just nailed all of those parts in a way that, again, I think for the overarching conversation about what this game is going to be in the lineage of what these Spider-Man games are and looking at the future of what Insomniac is going to be able to do, seeing how they treat superhero stories and superhero video games, I am infinitely excited about what's going to happen with Wolverine coming down the line. Again, not a part of this review, and we have no idea how far away that game is. But if they are able to pull off this kind of fidelity, this kind of fandom, this kind of connection to lore, with all those just like if you are a big Spider-Man fan, you're automatically looking at this game and seeing all the things that got put into it for fan service and saying, I love the fact that they have taken all the care that they have to be able to give you a game like this. And that makes me, as a huge Wolverine fan, so hyped to see what they're going to do with that game and other games they get a chance to touch in the Marvel Universe. You get a new bad guy in Kraven in this game. Again, we're not going to talk about exactly what he brings to the table, but his character was actually really interesting. I thought they did a good job with him and kind of, wrapping that story around it. The conversations between, MJ and Peter felt really cool to be able to kind of see the growth in their relationship. And it just makes you feel like you're a part of the world that Spider-Man is really in. I think it brings together all those pieces. It pulls together so much of the fan service. And again, I think what it does really well is feeling like Spider-Man is exactly what you want in this game. Swinging through this city at 30 frames per second. I played on Fidelity, on the Fidelity setting. I went and swapped between, and I'll show it, the Fidelity version and the performance version, which plays you at 60 frames per second. Fidelity has all the bells and whistles with the ray tracing at 30 frames per second, and you get 60 frames on performance. But honestly, performance mode doesn't really feel that great in terms of what I want from a game like this. I know people are really hyped on frames and they want the smoothest available version of a game that they can, but I think for me, these games are about bells and whistles. These games are about seeing the technical prowess of a developer in a studio. And if you're not playing this on Fidelity mode, I think you're doing it wrong. I think you're doing it wrong for your TV. I think you're doing it wrong for the experience. I think you're doing it wrong and in a way not really kind of giving the developer all of its due by playing it in a mode that doesn't really show all the cool things that you bought your system for. You bought that PS5 because you want cutting edge technology. You bought that PlayStation 5 because you want to showcase these games to your friends and your family. And I think this is a game that you can do that with if you play it on Fidelity mode. I think performance mode is nice, but I think it doesn't really get you exactly what you're hoping for in that way. Really cool to see Miles get some new powers. Spidey gets some new powers. Those really come into the game and throughout the story in interesting ways. They touch upon some relationships that come across. It was cool again to see the relationship between Miles and his mom also grow and see the relationship that they have be put into that space. It was also great to see Miles with some of his older friends and classmates kind of continue to grow in those spaces. Getting to see Genki and Miles signing all the time with their friend who's deaf also was really cool to continue to see them pull that into the story and make that a part of his life. But it is a really cool balance between the growing pains of Peter Parker trying to figure out how to live his life as Spider-Man as the one that we already have known and have loved, and Miles Morales kind of trying to be still the student while also kind of landing in a space where they're understanding more about themselves and how they can be the best Spider-Man that they can while having and giving Peter Parker some time to be able to kind of not do everything all the time. The balance between those two was really great. I think that they nailed that part of the conversation in the way that a lot of the conversations in the story comes about. And them being able to build that relationship into a much bigger one and a stronger one really does give some space for what eventually might be a Spider-Man 3 in a game coming up. Hopefully. I mean, again, at this point, you give Insomniac the keys to the castle. You say whatever you want to do, I'm down with it, and you can do whatever you want because they are proving themselves to be the best at what they do. I think overall this game is great. Again, it's not really going to be able to tell you a lot about the actual full experience because we're still under embargo, and the stuff that is under the embargo that we are under doesn't let us talk about the full thing. So we're going to talk more about all of the pieces of the game once the game is out, and we'll do that on Spawn on Me in a kind of much fuller, bigger conversation. I want to pull in some other content creators to talk about their experiences with the game as well, and I think you'll really have a good foundation for what you're going to experience when the game goes live so that all of you can play it. But even with that said, I think I spent so many hours in photo mode capturing all of these small moments. They've built out some fun new tools in that space. The ability to fast travel in this game, which is something that I know from a technical standpoint they talked about. The loads are basically gone in this game. You hardly have any, popping up a part of the map and being able to instantly travel there, and then you basically swoop in as the Spider-Man that you have chosen at that moment to kind of engage the city and go after crimes and things like that and go after missions. I love the fact that you're able to swap pretty much on the fly. There are some mission constraints where you can't sometimes use one of the versions of Spider-Man because that one is specifically for them. But even in those moments, it feels right in the way that the kind of story is being told, that you would be like, all right, I'm going to spend time with Peter Parker now, or I'm going to spend time with Miles now to kind of get the biggest impact for what that story beat is going to wind up being. I think, man, we are going to talk about Game of the Year conversations. Spider-Man 2 is going to be at the top of the list for a lot of those conversations for sure. This game has one of the strongest opening sequences I've seen since God of War 3. And again, I can't talk about it because it would be a spoiler, but I think it's going to be a thing that when people see it, they're going to talk about this and say, man, this is what we had hoped for in the beginning of the launch of the PlayStation 5. These are the moments that we see when we have these big moments in gaming where you look at a thing and you're like, man, we've come such a far way in terms of what we can do in a video game space with the technology that we have, that it really blew me away. I sat and I just sat there for a minute after that initial sequence and was like, where can you go from here? And they kept going up. And it kept getting better and it kept getting cooler. And so many different things wound up coming into the story that I was like, holy crap, this is going to be a banger of a game. And it wound up being exactly that. This game is a 5 out of 5 game. One of the best games I've played from Insomniac. One of the best games on the PlayStation 5. And I know that there's going to be some comparisons to the previous games and everyone's going to nitpick all the small things. And I'm going to hear a lot of folks talk about, well, this game isn't that different than the previous games. And I would say, there are some parts of this game from a combat perspective that do feel very similar to the previous games. I think there are some new powers in there, but I think the base combat that you have is very similar to what you played in the previous 2 games. I think what they've done, though, is they've added these kind of small story beats and all these dynamic crimes that you have to go fight around the city to be able to do more of that work. And all of those things are tied. There's collectibles again in here. There are side missions that influence, what cool suits you're going to be able to get in the game. They broaden out some of the lore, and they also do some fun storytelling within those spaces. And it gives, again, that dope vibe that you get from a Miles Morales game mashed up with a Spider-Man game.
All right, but the next post-fight piece is on me.
And put them all together. So all of that to say, we'll have a lot more thoughts about what this game is going to be once we can talk about all the kind of nitty-gritty parts. But again, this is a 5 out of 5, one of the best experiences I've had in a long time. Massive love and thanks to our friends over at Sony for providing us early code and giving us a chance to play one of the biggest games on the planet early for this year. Check out what's going to happen for Game of the Year conversations, because this will be at the top of the list for sure. And I think, again, this is going to be a game that you're going to spend hours upon hours playing, hours upon hours in photo mode, messing around with stuff, and just having a blast living your Spider-Man life out in this game. So thank you so much for taking some time to check out this spoiler-free review. I hope that you got something really good out of this and found some good content within it. Again, check out Spawn on Me when the game goes live, and we'll have a larger, broader discussion about what this game is and what was in it and all the cool story beats that we can then talk about and all the cool characters that we got a chance to see. But until then, much love to you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again for watching.